I think everybody's got to get themselves a hula hoop. Why? And because things are so twisted, and everything is twisted. The whole news, everything that's going on in the whole political and news realm is all twisted together. You can't figure out what's going up and what's going down, what's going sideways. So many times, Q has said that it's time to eat popcorn, and and I've eaten a lot of it. Now, trust me, even when you're twisted, you can eat a lot of popcorn. Hi there, Neil here, the Twisted Light Worker. That's for sure. Twisted. Everything is happening all at once. We have so many things to talk about, and I don't have enough time to put them all in this video, but I'm going to share with you a few things that are happening on the political scene and the news scene that not much of it is hitting mainstream, if at all. And what is hitting mainstream, as usual, is all twisted. All twisted. Like, who's this? Robin McGraw? Robin McGraw. Who's that? Is that Dr. Phil's wife? How come that she looks so much different now that her plastic surgery? It looks to me like it's two different people. And then, of course, we have Hayden Panettiere. I'll play a couple clips now of Hayden. That'll get you thinking.
You write about a moment in your career where a friend of yours takes you onto a boat. You're led to a room which has an older man in it, and then basically told to perform sexual acts and,
Oh, yeah. Perspective completely shifted, and I realized that I was in danger. But by the time I'd realized I was in danger, I was quite literally out to sea. And it was that moment shook me and was shocking. And I was quite literally walked down, and I had been having a great time. There was no hints of anything like that happening. So it took me, I was shocked. It took me by surprise. And it was led by somebody that I had grown to trust and see as a protector and somebody who had my back. And to be walked down, down the stairs, and it was as like a surprise, presented as though it was like a surprise. And it was this very small room, and she physically put me in the bed next to this undressed man who was very famous and had his hands like this, like this was just an average day for him. This is something that happens all the time. And I waited for her to leave, and I mean that lion in me, that fire in me, that my hair stood on end, and I became ferocious. I was like, this is not happening. But I had nowhere to hide, and I bolted, and I hid wherever I could think of to hide on a boat. There was no jumping off and swimming away, and there was nobody who was going to, I realized that there was nobody who was going to be empathetic to my situation, that this was nothing new to them.
It's always when someone dies that people pay more attention. Now there's been another death. Hayden Panettiere, 36 years old, and this comes after she's exposed in Hollywood. But that's what we've been told. But look at this for timing, and we are in the middle of an operation. And it is the case that when people die, people pay attention. So if we actually look what she was in a major series called Heroes, one of the main characters, and the phrase from that was, save the cheerleader, save the world. And she had special abilities that she could regenerate from any illness, and she was a target from the enemy. But if we look at Heroes, the logo, it's got the total solar eclipse. We've just had that now, the first time since 1999. Is that a coincidence? She's the main character. Heroes has that as a logo. And if we actually look at what that means in Heroes, it says in the TV show Heroes, a prolonged solar eclipse temporarily strips all evolved humans of their supernatural abilities, rendering both heroes and villains completely powerless. Well, we can see there's freak out taking place on all the gatekeepers all around the world at the moment because they are completely powerless. The communists, the traffickers. And this will start tying into trafficking when we actually look into her story and try not to get caught up in she's exposing Hollywood because we need to listen to her. But this will tie into trafficking at the highest levels, which will then trickle down to the local levels, which then links to a lot of people that you are following that are involved with this trafficking dirty snake of a system. So if we now go through it, stay with me, because this connects a lot of the dots and leaves it open for us just to do a bit more digging. So a video's gone round of Jay Shetty and say, look, she's exposing Hollywood. But listen to what she actually says here.
It was somebody led by somebody that I had grown to trust and see as a protector and somebody who had my back. And to be walked down, down the stairs, and it was this very small room, and she physically put me in the bed next to this undressed man who was very famous and had his hands like this, like this was just an average day for him. This is something that happens all the time.
So a woman forced her into it. She said it was like a normal thing for this guy on the bed. But in her memoir, she said this. Look, Hayden Panettiere shares the new details of a boat incident with famous 30-something British singer-songwriter. She's someone from the UK, a singer-songwriter in the 30s, not Hollywood, but she was forced into it by this woman. And because this is an operation, you can only connect the dots going backwards. These people are protected by Hollywood. If we go to the Q post, it says, look, they made many current former enslaved children famous. Look, Hollywood is filled with them, models. And right at the bottom, it says they thought the sheep would follow the stars. They being the gatekeepers, they now are the people that we are following for the last few years. But if we read it again, look, they made current former enslaved children famous. Hollywood is filled with them, meaning they come into Hollywood after. They're protected from that. And Hayden Panettiere was one of them. But if we actually then look at the story after this boat incident, it then shows us in 2009, Panettiere met then world heavyweight boxing champion Vladimir Klitschko at the book launch of a former mutual acquaintance, Diana Jenkins. And we wouldn't know about Diana Jenkins, but she's connected with all the Hollywood stars. And if we dig into a bit deeper, she's also been accused of trafficking.
The book was a catalog of call girls in some way.
Nothing can be more further from the truth. Really, that book was done, I'm very proud of it, and it has done a lot of good for a lot of people. So it broke my heart that I have to now defend something so special.
There's a lot of online chatter linking you with Jeffrey Epstein. What can you tell me about that? Did you know him?
Never met that man.
You've been linked to everyone from Justin Timberlake to Guy Ritchie as well.
That's a all. My gosh, I'm a very busy woman. I don't know how I do all these things. Very busy. They're my friends. Am I allowed to have friends?
She set up a foundation in the Congo. She set up a foundation in Haiti. Straight after those earthquakes, we know Haiti's involved with trafficking. If we watch the blacklist, it shows you how that these charities and foundations are a front for the people that saying that they're helping the children are actually the ones trafficking the children.
I run my business, and I'm being wined and dined by the city's elite. I'm going to kiss that sweet, young FBI agent on the cheek and say goodnight, and then go down to docks and pick up my next shipment of girls.
Madame Campo doesn't free children from slavery, she imprisons them. Floriana Campo is the largest distributor of enslaved children in the Eastern Hemisphere. Her foundation is a front to launder the profits of the Eberhard cartel, which she runs.
In 2022, she had to take legal proceedings because so many people are calling her a Hollywood madam and involved of human trafficking. So we come back to Hayden. It says, in her memoir, she recounted a disturbing incident from when she was 18 alleging that a trusted older female friend placed her in a room on a boat in bed next to an undressed, highly famous actor. Well, she said that the singer was in his 30s and is from the UK. So if you actually do searches, who could it be? It brings up two names, Robbie Williams and James Blunt. And they were both connected with Diana Jenkins and Hayden Panettiere. So Robbie Williams and Diana Jenkins have a long run in the same celebrity circles. In fact, when Jenkins exited The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills in early 2023, rumours circulated that Robbie Williams' wife, Ada Field Williams, was being considered. It says, during the late 2000s, the exact period referenced in Hayden Panettiere's memoir, both Robbie Williams and Hayden Panettiere were living and working in Los Angeles. Then you got an article on James Blunt. Look, makes sharp move on Hayden Panettiere. And James Blunt has been a staple at Diana Jenkins' elite celebrity parties for nearly 2 decades. In his book, Blunt explicitly wrote about attending Jenkins' star-studded birthday bashes at her Malibu home. So all of this links back to sex trafficking, human trafficking at the highest levels, the elite levels. There's a reason why so many people are so fearful of this all coming out, because the elite levels all trickle down to the local levels. Online trafficking, everything links back to human trafficking. This is what the big awakening is about. And there's so many people that you follow that are part of this trafficking system. So just be careful getting caught up straight away. Oh, it's all about Hollywood, because it's not if you actually look at it and actually listen to the person that's just passed away. But it all seems a bit of a coincidence because of the heroes connection, the solar eclipse, save the cheerleader, save the world, and where we are in the world right now, exposing all of this evil, and it's all being revealed to us.
That's crazy. So that means pedophilia may be coming back up onto the scene. And we still have Dr. Fauci and his pleading the fifth. And the work that's going on election fraud 2020, and also making sure there's no election fraud for this year's midterms. Like, everything's hitting the fan at the same time, and we're supposed to figure out all the details. And it's all twisted together, so your brain gets all twisted. It's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. We definitely get all twisted up. So here I'm going to talk about Iran now. And Susan Kokinda has some great things to say of what's going on with Mr. Carney in Canada, and how that ties into some real twisted quagmires.
Last night, President Trump announced a 3-day pause in a war, and it wasn't about Iran. Here's what he posted. I have paused the 50% tariffs against Canada that were scheduled to kick in tomorrow morning for a 3-day period, based on the fact that Canada and the United States, subject to the finalization of documents, have a deal. The great Keystone XL pipeline, long ago killed by sleepy Joe Biden, may be awoken from the grave. Now, the media will focus on the Keystone Pipeline aspect of this and whatever else is evolving from the ongoing USMCA trade negotiations. But there is something much bigger going on, and it ranges from what White House advisor Peter Navarro accused Canada of being one of the countries engaged in a basically modern form of smuggling, to a Canadian member of Parliament who's organizing a petition to throw the U.S. ambassador to Canada out of the country. This isn't a trade dispute. This is a war, and it's been going on a lot longer than the conflict with Iran. I'm Susan Kokinda, and I've tracked how the British Empire rebrands itself in order to keep up the war against American sovereignty. That's what we follow here at Promethean Action, and if that's a fight you want to be in on, hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons. Here's what I'm going to cover today. 1, the outlaw ledger, that is, what Canada actually does versus what it says it does. 2, how the speeches of 2 cabinet officers, one American and one Canadian, highlight the real battle lines. And 3, who's behind the recall petition and the larger strategy. So last week, Canada's Interior Minister, Melanie Joly, was in London at Chatham House, selling Canada to the assembled audience as a, quote, stable, grown-up, reliable partner, as opposed to the United States, of course. But here is how that grown-up partner operates. 4 days ago, the White House put out a report called the Great Transshipment Scam. And here's what the president's trade advisor, Peter Navarro, said about it.
But what happened beginning immediately in 2018 is that China strategically began to develop methods of what's called transshipping. It's basically a modern form of smuggling.
As Navarro was describing how the Chinese repackage their goods into products that are produced in countries with lower tariffs in order to, quote, smuggle them in, the broadcast was showing just what countries are involved, and Canada is near the top of the list. But that's not the only list that Canada is on. When the administration escalated its tariff strategy back in July, it targeted countries which failed to enforce measures banning goods produced by forced or slave labor. Canada is on the short list of 6 countries which failed to enforce their own laws. Then there are the dirty money flows, which are the hallmark of the empire's deregulated financial system. They have a name for the Canadian side of it. It's called snowwashing. Transparency International Canada put the problem bluntly, quote, "There are more rigorous checks to obtain a library card than there are to set up a shell company." And they said this leaves Canada, in their words, with, quote, "some of the weakest corporate transparency laws in the world." And the money that gets washed is not petty cash. British Columbia's Cullen Commission, a full public inquiry whose final report was released in June 2022, documented what investigators called the Vancouver model, cartel and triad money from the Sinaloa and CGNG cartels and Chinese triads laundered through casinos, luxury cars, and real estate. In BC real estate alone, the estimates ran from $800 million to over $5 billion a year. Now, if that reminds you of how the City of London and its offshore Caribbean islands house drug cartel and terrorist money, including the IRGC, it should. That is the empire's business model. So that's just part of the rap sheet on Canada, the stable, reliable, grown-up partner, in Minister Jolie's words. So the USMCA fight, the trade negotiations that everyone is watching, that's one flank. Canada doesn't cheat on trade because of sloppy enforcement. It uses trade to erode American economic sovereignty by design. That isn't a trading partner. That's an outlaw with a flag stapled to it. Now, if you want to track the British Empire's long war against American sovereignty before it hits the headlines, subscribe to Promethean Action's free newsletter. The link is in the description. Because none of this is really about tariffs or forced labor lists. It's about 2 different systems. Now, watch when you put 2 speeches side by side. One happened in Midland, Texas, by our energy secretary in front of oil and gas workers, and the other by Secretary Jolie again at Chatham House in London in front of Britain's premier foreign policy establishment. Same subject, energy, and they couldn't be farther apart. Here's what Chris Wright, the U.S. Energy Secretary, said.
Think about that. Human life expectancy at birth globally was 30 years 20,000 years ago. It was 30 years 200 years ago. The most transformative force ever to visit human civilization. Well, besides family and faith and morality and those things that power our inners. But the most transformative thing to the physical condition of humans ever is oil and natural gas. Today, life expectancy is over 70 years. All of that rise happened with the rise of the oil and gas industry.
Let that really sink in. Wright isn't talking about barrels or pipelines. He's talking about why your grandmother's grandmother died at 30 and you didn't. That's energy as a civilization, not a commodity. And he didn't stop at history. He pointed to a new iron ore mine opening in Minnesota, the first one in 50 years, and a steel plant going up nearby that he called the largest in the world. Reindustrialization, this is the core of the president's economic policy, and it depends on modern sources of energy. Then he made the moral point, quote, "1 billion people live these awesome lives that we have. 7 billion people want to live the awesome lives that we have here. Now go to London, where Melanie Joly revealed Canada's new strategy. Of course, she wasn't freelancing. She was channeling Mark Carney's line about how Canada is leading the middle powers in a new alliance against the economic hegemons, namely the United States and China.
And so, industrial policy is the new geopolitics. We've entered an era of geo-industrialization, where doing business together is no longer through only private markets. It is also very much through government-to-government decisions, where decisions are linked to geopolitical choices.
So catch that new phrase, geo-industrialization. Now, what is the significance of that? It's the extension into economics of the British Empire's policy of geopolitics. In other words, run your foreign policy by treating nations as dispensable pawns on a chessboard, destroying them through wars or color revolutions, whatever is needed to keep the empire in control. Joly says that geo-industrialization is Canada's economic policy, and especially its energy policy. And it's based on the same foundation. Use economics, or in this case, energy, as a weapon in the fight to maintain globalism in its new Mark Carney-led 2.0 form. Now, Joly comes by her imperial views honestly. Regular viewers of Promethean Action are not going to be surprised to find out that she studied at Oxford on a British government scholarship. So her speech at Chatham House was kind of a homecoming.
Look, I know you don't want to see an ad in the middle of a video. I'm going to ask you just to give me a minute of your time. Over the years, I've developed and facilitated many workshops, some of them like 2 hours, all on people reading skills, and some of them were just inspirational talks, and they were like 2 hours as well. Right on up to a 9-hour talk that I do facilitate and take people on a journey to meet their higher self and help transmute some of the traumas that they have locked up on the inside of their character. I just uploaded this workshop that you can download. It's called Breaking Out of Your Cocoon. It's a workshop to inform and empower. And some of the people that I've met that took me on this journey in learning about self-discipline and motivation and inspiration, people like Dennis Waitley, who met him and shook his hand. He's the author of the book called The Psychology of Winning. Brian Tracy, I've met him twice, shook his hand, and even spent 20 minutes on one-on-one. Had his very original cassette series as well as his CD series, and read a couple of his books. And anybody in the sales and marketing, motivational inspiration always runs into Tony Robbins. And of course, he introduces people to NLP, and I was at one of his workshops and shook his hand as well. So, Breaking Out of Your Cocoon has 3 basic video parts to it. Video part 1 is all about the people reading skills. Video number 2, it gets into a little bit heavier stuff, and that's where I take my metaphysical training and mysticism training and things of that path. It will really take you down a way of learning how to use your mind. Step number 2 is a mind workout. And we're going to learn how to question everything, observe and research. There's 9 steps that I follow that will help you get better at using your mind and critical thinking and discernment. And your skills will be way up after you've gone through that workshop and actually do the exercises that's included. And step 3 in the workshop, of course, is tapping into that inner power. Take you down a journey in video number 3 and help you transmute some trauma that you may not even know that's hidden in your psyche from when you were a child. And I also take you on another one where you tap into that peace so that you can be in the middle of the chaos and still find that inner peace. So, Breaking Out of Your Cocoon workshop, that information's going to inform you and empower you and take you places you've never been. Hopefully, you'll check it out.
That she studied at Oxford on a British government scholarship. So her speech at Chatham House was kind of a homecoming. Contrast her speech to Secretary Wright. He's talking about energy as a critical element in advancing civilization and creating a better life potentially for the 8 billion people on this planet. Wright wants to build civilization. Joly wants to manage the empire's control. One produces, the other positions. And that is what is really behind the trade disputes between the United States and Canada. This is not just one nation maneuvering for a more favorable trade deal for the benefit of its people. This is geopolitics in industrial terms, which is why U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra is not very popular in Canada. Now, I watched Hoekstra up close when he was chairman of the Michigan Republican Party, and it was clear when President Trump chose him that he wanted a bulldog for ambassador, someone who wouldn't back down in this war. The empire has figured that out. And so this summer, a campaign began to get rid of him. More than 200,000 Canadians have now signed a formal petition to the House of Commons demanding their government declare Pete Hoekstra persona non grata, the diplomatic term for throwing an ambassador out of the country. So who started this? Elizabeth May, a leader of Canada's Green Party. She was born in Connecticut to a British father who hated living in the United States. So the family left for Canada and she renounced her American citizenship altogether. She spent the next 4 decades as a professional environmental activist, running the Sierra Club of Canada and campaigning against the oil, the gas, and the industry that built the modern world before becoming leader of the Green Party. Now, the petition can't actually expel anyone. It forces the government to file a written response. But the Canadian government has been silent so far. And read what the petition actually objects to. It attacks Hoekstra for normalizing talk of Canada as a 51st state, and for the fact that officials from the movement for Alberta's independence met with the U.S. State Department 3 times over the past year. Think about what that tells you. The province the establishment is most afraid of losing is Alberta, the one that produces the energy. The one, by the way, where the Keystone Pipeline originates. Which brings us to a question that the petition can't answer. If Canada is so eager to remove our representative from their country, what exactly is their representative doing here? Let's go back to what Mélanie Joly is up to on this side of the pond. Here's what she told Chatham House she is doing.
I was in Boston last week, meeting much more with the Democrats, but also I'll be heading to many different cities, Chicago, going to Texas, Florida in the next few weeks. So, and understanding also what's the position of different lawmakers within states, but also at the federal level.
So a cabinet minister of a foreign government is moving through American cities in the middle of a trade war, sitting down with the political opposition, taking inventory of which of our own in Congress and our own state houses might take Canada's side against our own elected government. So this isn't just about the USMCA or tariffs. Canada doesn't cheat on trade because of sloppy enforcement. It uses trade to erode American economic sovereignty, and it's not an accident, it's the design. This is a fight between 2 systems, one outlined by Chris Wright to build the modern world for Americans and for the 7 billion people who need energy, who aspire to have what we have, and the one outlined by Joly, deploying the empire's new geo-industrial strategy, while a Green Party leader tries to remove the American ambassador who won't back down. That's the battle writ large, and it's the difference between these 2 countries. One is a sovereign republic, the other is an imperial outpost, and the man running it is the empire's own central banker. Donald Trump understands that, and so do we. So if you want to be part of that fight, join Promethean Action as a supporting or a contributing member. This has been your Wednesday update. Thanks for watching.
Promethean Action always does a great job with all that they produce. I highly recommend following them. I share a lot of their stuff, so if you don't have time to follow them and you are following me, you're going to get a little bit of it, because I try to put the highlights in once in a while, and I make short videos. You'll find me, if you follow me on Telegram, you'll find me putting a lot of short videos from EV in Action. I'll put them up there, and I won't bother putting them up to my video hosting platforms where I do more talking. And so you can see that there's so much going on. But the best part is we really do have to work on ourselves, because this great awakening is all about tapping into that source of the divine that's inside. That source of the divine that's inside each and every single cell of your body. You got 70 to 100 trillion cells in your body, and each one has DNA in it. And the DNA code is the God code. It's right in your DNA strands. So we're all connected through that God source that's inside each and every one of us. God hath not given the spirit of fear, but of love and of power and sound mind. And we have to tap into all three of those gifts and activate them in our lives. That's part of that workshop that I told you about. And also, you know, have you noticed happy people care about humanity, while unhappy people seem to only care about how tough life is for them? I see that all the time. And when we shift our energy from fear to power with compassion, we will find we were always loved, way beyond human understanding. It takes willpower to get the ego out of the way in silence. It's not a passive act. Action with the power of intent will stop the ego's chatter and lead you to freedom. Welcome to the discipline of awakening. Some of that is in my workshop as well. When one stops thinking, stops questioning, especially their own beliefs, that's when expansion stops. So don't stop questioning your beliefs, and don't stop thinking, growing, and learning. The new world will be so different. And as we tap into that spark of the divine more and more, we realize deeper and deeper, we create ourselves and our reality. So let's just move forward and create. Let's just move forward and create. And I've been saying this now since 2017. I coined the phrase thrivealism, and I thought I was the only one using it, but I found out other people use it, but nobody's using it like me. When we get really activated, we will be here. 2030 will be our agenda. It won't be the globalist agenda. It'll be ours. And I call it thrivealism because we are going to learn how to thrive and be happy. And individual nation states are all over the place. And you know what? The 𝓱𝓮𝓻𝓮 is happening right before our eyes. The 𝓱𝓮𝓻𝓮 is happening right before our eyes. Are you seeing it? What do you think the American system of economics is? I'll let you ponder that one. Let you ponder that one. So, twisted. Everything's twisted. I'm twisted. I love to have twisted humor, and I twist a little bit of empowerment with information on what the white hats are doing and things to ponder. This video is long enough, and I'm going to sign off in my usual way from the bottom of my heart with all the cells of my body, every strand of DNA and that God code inside me is reaching into that God code inside you. And I wish you and yours peace profound.